Hey, baby, don't you wanna go? I said, hey, don't you wanna go back to that same old place? That's my sweet home, Chicago.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to Long & McQuaid's Ukulele Day and to this beginner workshop. I can't see you personally, but I have a chat window open, and Matt, who's running our back end, will relay your questions to me. So please feel free to send them along, and let's get going, shall we? This lovely beast I'm holding here, this is my double neck ukulele that was made by Fred Casey in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I had it custom made. It is a concert scale neck on the top and a tenor scale neck on the bottom, and I have a high G on the top and I have the low G on the tenor neck. Now I'm using this one just so I could show you the demonstrate for you the difference between various scales and the sound, but this is, other than being a little fancy, no different than any regular ukulele. Long & McQuaid has a lot of great models to look at, so if you haven't already bought one, check them out. Kala is one of the lines that they are big into, and I think are pretty great. So this is all about the basics of a ukulele. So I'm assuming that many of you have never owned a ukulele before, or maybe just bought your first one and wanting to get started. So I thought first thing we would do is go over the parts of a ukulele. So when you're looking at your basic ukulele here, you have got, starting from the right, we've got our headstock here. This is, of course, where the tuners are located. And the tuners are the little fiddly bits on the end there. That's what we're going to use to tune the strings. Traveling up the neck, we have the nut. This is where the strings pass over. And right behind that nut is our fretboard. That's where all of our chords are going to be played. Where am I looking for? There it is. There's the fret marker there. That tells you what a fret is. Those are the little wire lines that you see in between. Then we have our sound hole, which is in the middle of the box. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of inside information, maybe. That's not meant to be as big a pun as it sounds like. Sound hole is not really where the sound comes from. The sound comes from the top of your ukulele. The sound hole is used to bring air into the box as you play. So if you're ever playing live and you want to mic your ukulele, you want to put that mic just close to the bridge. That's where you'll get the best sound out of a ukulele in terms of the deepest tone. But that's a question for a sound man, not for you. That gives you the basics of all of the parts of a ukulele. And we're going to go over a little bit about how to tune a ukulele as well, so that you can, take care of tuning your ukulele. Now, when we tune our ukulele, you can see here we've got our 4 strings. I'm just about to point at my screen like you could see my hand pointing at the screen. I do this all the time. It is the most ridiculous thing, and I have not found a better solution. When you're looking at the headstock as it sits there, on the left side you see the G string. That is the string that is right here at the top of your instrument. That's this one. The next one is the C. The next one close to the floor is the E. And the one closest to the floor, that's the A string. And this is important to know because you're going to tune your instrument appropriately to those notes. This is what's known as a C6 tuning as well. You'll hear people talk about that saying, hey, how do you tune your ukulele? And they'll say, well, it's to a C6. Or there's some people in the country, and I've taught them, that tune to a D6, which is one step higher. So you want to make sure that you have that all worked out. Now we're going to talk a little bit about tuners. These are an array of different types of tuners that you will find on the marketplace here. They all have one thing in common, which is that they clip onto the end of your headstock. There are many, many more than I could show you in a simple presentation like this. What's important to note is the way that a tuner works. If you look at these tuners, you'll see that they all show a note in the center, and they have some sort of meter on the top that swings from the left to the right. Typically, the way that it'll work is if the arrow is swinging to the left, your note is flat. If your arrow is swinging to the right, your note is sharp. And if it's dead in the center, that's when it's in tune. And often they'll do things like that metal tuner where it changes to green. Now, the way that sounds for a practical sense is, right now this is my low G. Right here, I'm just plucking it with my finger. If I make that flat, it sounds like that. If I bring it up to tune again, that's pretty close. Not quite. I don't have a tuner hooked up right now. I'm doing this by ear. So usually you tune clockwise to sharpen a note and counterclockwise to flatten a note. And the trick is to get it exactly on that pitch so that your chord diagrams work right. Now, speaking of chord diagrams, this is what a chord diagram looks like. These are your first 3 chords. You'll probably spend a fair amount of time looking at them, and it's important to start out with a basic understanding of what you're looking at. So you have to imagine right now that when you're looking at that chord diagram, you're looking at your headstock just like this. I'm trying to make it level, where the nut is at the top, your G string is on the right, and so on and so forth. So when we're looking at that first diagram C, what it's telling me to do is to put a finger on the 3rd fret of my A string, the first string, and that is my C chord. That's the first one you're going to learn. Oh, I see a question from Elizabeth Sanders. I'm confused about being left-handed and having to play right-handed. This is a choice that you can make. Yes, you could turn the uke around and get it restrung to play left-handed. Every diagram you're going to find, every book is going to be written for right-handed players. If you are not, I want to say that more correctly, I apologize for that term. I believe that you need dexterity in both hands, and I think that there's a misnomer that the ukulele can be turned around left and right-handed. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I have a few friends who are left-handed players that end up, that's the way they feel the most comfortable. But I think of the ukulele like a violin. You don't see anybody who playing a violin here and going, you know what, I feel it'd be better this way. They stick to the way it's meant to be played. The other answer to that is that you'll always find out, Elizabeth, that there's always going to be more right-handed ukuleles out there. You're going to have to search for left-handed ukuleles or have them made for you. That's a choice you can make, and I certainly don't want to discourage you being right-handed myself. I feel I can't speak to someone's challenges with feeling comfortable, but that's going to be your challenge for sure, is if you have to flip over all the chord diagrams or other things to suit that view. But that's easy enough to do. So getting back to reading our chord diagrams, when you see at the top of the chord diagram those zeros, that means that that string is left open. So as I said with the C chord, when I'm covering that first fret on, or first string on the 3rd fret, and I strum down, the other strings, G, C, and E, are left open, and that creates my chord. If we look at the F chord, you'll see that I'm covering the 1st fret on the 2nd string and the 2nd fret on the 4th string, and I'm leaving the C and A strings open, and that creates my F chord. Now typically to do that, you'll use your fingers in a prescribed manner. There's numbers you'll find often. The way it usually works is the index finger is often called 1, the middle finger is called 2, the ring finger is 3, and the pinky is 4. And you'll see diagrams that give numbers like the ones I've presented here, telling you where to put your fingers. So for example, on that G7 chord right there at the very right of your screen, you take your first finger and you put it on the 1st fret of the E string. You take your middle finger, you put it on the 2nd fret of the C string, and my ring finger goes on the 2nd fret of the A string. My G is left wide open, and there I have a G7 chord. Now those 3 chords will make up your first song. It ain't gonna rain no more, no more. Ain't gonna rain no more. How in the heck can I wash my neck? It ain't gonna rain no more. And that was just using 2 chords, C and G7. Now there's another thing that I want to show you about chords, and that is you'll see a diagram like this one once in a while. This chord here is known as a C6 chord. Now what's different about it is you'll see that number on the right-hand side. That's telling you that that first finger position starts at the 3rd fret. So to play that chord, for example, I would put my fingers, my index finger there at the 2nd string at the 3rd fret, my middle finger on the 4th fret of the C string, and my ring finger up on the 5th fret, and that would give me this lovely C6 kind of a chord. What's interesting about that, by the way, is that your ukulele is tuned to that chord in a different arrangement of notes. So that kind of covers how to read a chord diagram. Truthfully, you'll spend a lot of time looking at chord diagrams, and they'll sometimes show up without names attached to them, but the shapes will be there. So get used to those shapes. What you'll want to do is practice going back and forth between those shapes. So for example, these first 3, C, F, and G7, you'll want to just sit there at home and go C, F, G7, back to F, back to C, to G7, to C, with no rhyme or reason. You're not trying to make music. What you're trying to do is train your fingers to get into those shapes as quickly as you can. And the trick that you want to do as a player is you want to keep your fingers attached to the strings as much as possible. So, for example, if I'm playing that C chord, I'm using my ring finger on there, and I want to go to play that G7, what I want to do is just, instead of taking that finger off and then building that chord, I should take this finger and just slide it down, because that's where it's going to go. The same is true as if I'm playing the F chord. You'll notice that these 2 fingers are floating out there from the C. If I'm going to F, I just need to lay them down. And if I lift this up and then lay them down, I'm adding extra time. Whereas what I should do is just lay them down and then lift. And that's just, it is just a practice thing. If I'm going from F to G7, for example, I'll get a close up here for you. You'll see that I'm covering those 2 strings. And if I want to go to G7, that's the shape I want to make. I'm barely in the screen there. Hold on, I'll get a better view for you. There you go. There's an F. I pull that into a G7 just like that. So my index finger never needs to leave, because it's always going to be in that spot. And that is the trick to making chord changes quick. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do them over and over and over again yourself. It's not something that just comes naturally. You'll have to practice it and try to get your fingers into the shape. Which brings up a point that I need to share with you, and that is the way in which you hold that chord shape. Not only do your fingers need to be there, but your thumb, this little guy, needs to live in the center of the back of your ukulele. So, for example, right now I'm going to turn this around and try to get you a look at it. Try to get my hand there. When I make that chord, I want my thumb to live, this is really awkward, I want my thumb to live there in the center. And it's easy for beginners at the beginning, because these necks are so small, to do this. And you'll even see professional players do that. You'll even see me on occasion do that. It's unfortunately, guitar players have a technique where they learn to wrap their thumb over the neck. So if you've been a guitar player, you might get used to that. You don't want to do that. There's a couple of reasons. The first one is, when your thumb is in the right position, it pushes your hand forward, which allows you to get over the strings cleanly so that you can get a good sound out of your strings, a nice clean chord. The second is, it teaches you to put your thumb in the right position for the chord, which will make your voicings that much easier to get. And 9 times out of 10, when I run into somebody who's having trouble making a chord work, you look at them and their thumb is way out over here, and they're going, gee, how come I can't get a good sound out of that chord, Hal? And it's, well, your thumb is way off somewhere else, you know. So work on getting your thumb into the right position right from the start. And that is about all about that. Now let's talk about strumming. Strumming is the skill that is, you're going to spend a lot of time doing this, and there's going to be a lot of people talking about strumming patterns. You're going to go to clubs, and you're going to go, what is the pattern on that? Here's the trick. This is what you need to do. You take your hand, and you can use either your index finger like this in a pointing mode, so my hand is closed up like that, and I've just got a finger out, and you can strum here. The other thing you can do is use your thumb and strum. I tend to strum open-handed because I'm a finger picker as well, so I tend to do this kind of flailing looking strum, but really what's happening is my middle finger is what's doing the strumming, because of course it's longer than all the other fingers, so I just keep my hand open and that's the one that does the strum. Now, if you're a guitar player and you're coming at this, you could pinch your fingers together like you've got a pick and you could strum that way. If you prefer to use a pick, you can get a felt pick, you can get a plastic pick, although I would stay away from those, they'll tend to break your strings. But you could get a felt pick, and there's nothing wrong, literally nothing wrong with using a pick to play your ukulele if that's what you prefer. What I will suggest is that over the lifetime of your playing a ukulele, you're going to use all various methods of strumming. So, for example, it might be appropriate to use your finger, and a lot of books will tell you to use this grip and this finger, whereas you might find it much more comfortable to start with your thumb. Well, I'll tell you, as a player have been playing now for almost 30 years, you will use both your finger and your thumb many times, and for different reasons, so don't worry about which one you start with. I can suggest a really good reason to use your index finger as a strummer, and that is that your nail would be the first thing to contact the strings. And when you bring your finger back on a backstroke, you will get a pad sound. So you hear the difference between a nail and a pad. The pad is softer. This helps set up a natural rhythm. So for example, if I'm just going down and up on my strings, like this, and you'll notice I've not playing any chord because I just want to hear the string sound, that the nail gives a slightly sharper sound and the pad gives a softer sound coming up. If I use my thumb, I have the reverse of that. So I get that softer sound going down and the sharper sound coming up. Now, if that's what you want to do, it's comfortable. There's literally no reason you shouldn't do that. But I think that you'll find from a strumming perspective, the nail going down gives you a much more pleasing rhythm. To that end, you also want to make sure that your hand is not rigidly tight. You don't want to be sitting there going like really sharp, hard strokes. You want to be relaxed and comfortable. Downstroke is down to the floor, upstroke is up to the sky, and you're just going back and forth. Just like that. Start with a comfortable tempo. Don't try to go too fast. You want to be able to make the chord changes on the downbeat. And you'll do that over and over and over again. In fact, I honestly recommend that if you want to get good at playing the ukulele, take your ukulele out, and when you're watching your favorite Netflix show that you're binge watching, sit there and just strum your chords. If you don't want to play the chords out loud, lay your hand across the strings and just get this kind of a sound. The reason I suggest that is what you want to do is you want to make strumming automatic. Because everything you have to think about while you're trying to put a song together will tax your brain, and at some point you won't remember something. So for example, at the beginning, if you're thinking constantly down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, you're going to miss out on the chord change you need to make. And especially if you get into a complicated strum, there might be down, down, up, down, down, up. If you're trying to remember that feeling while you're playing chords, you'll forget the chord changes, you'll forget other things. So practice that strum just on its own and do it over and over and over again so that your strumming hand becomes automatic. I also encourage you to think in terms of your strumming hand purely as a drum set. So when you're listening to a drum beat, boom, tack, boom, tack, boom, tack, boom, tack. You got your downstrokes and your upstrokes are different instruments in a drum set. Boom, tack. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can kind of get that feeling. A skill you want to master is emphasis. You want to put more strength into certain strums. So if I'm doing a 4/4 pattern, for example, I'll just do 4 downstrokes. 1, 2. I might want the first beat to be louder, so I want to get 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can keep that feeling. And that's a practice thing. You just do it over and over again. I know it's monotonous and boring. I would love to be much more exciting for you, but the reality of learning the instrument is these are the fundamentals that you have to sort of dig into. I recommend you get yourself a nice chord book. There's many free resources on the web for this. I've got an app on my... There you go. That's Matt voicing in. I knew that there's opportunities for that. I've got an app on my iPad, for example, that has all the chords you could ever think of. And it even plays the way they're supposed to sound. So when you see them, you just touch them. There's lots of resources. That's really what I'm trying to tell you. And if you... let me start that line a little bit over. There's a difference between repertoire and practice. A lot of people will go to their local ukulele club, or they'll get a book of songs that they want to learn to play, and they will play those songs, and they will call it their ukulele practice. There's nothing wrong with that, but what you're practicing is repertoire. Now, you will get good at that repertoire, but you may not be learning the skills to play anything that comes in front of you. So I recommend you do a skills practice. So find chords, find rhythm practice studies, and just work on those things individually as part of your practice routine without any connection to music directly. There's a 15-minute ukulele workout I used to suggest to people, which is to pick a key you're working in. So for example, when we were looking at our ukulele chords here, oops, that's the wrong one. When we were looking at our ukulele chords here, C, F, and G7, those are three primary chords for the key of C. You'll use those chords a lot. So what I would tell someone is to get those chords, practice them so that they could get comfortable with them. Practice a strumming pattern that they want to use. At the beginning, just do your downstrokes if that's what you're comfortable with. And then play a song that puts them all together so that you're trying to do this and keep it going. And the way it works is put 5 minutes into the strumming, just like this. Put 5 minutes into just reminding yourself the shapes and the changes that you need to make to get into them. And then 5 minutes playing the song that uses those shapes. And what you'll find is the goal of this is not that in each session you memorize all that. The goal is familiarity. What you'll do is every day, you do this for 15 minutes every day, and every day you change keys. So for example, I just showed you 3 primary chords in the key of C. Tomorrow you might want to get 3 primary chords in the key of D, or 3 primary chords in the key of E, and so on. And you practice them, and then you practice a strumming pattern that goes with it and a song that uses those chords. And the idea is to start building this familiarity with these materials. You're going to see them over and over again. You're going to practice with them over and over again. And when you get to the end of 7 days, well, you've used 7 keys, which are all there are. You start back over doing it again. And instead of by doing this as a skills development, when you turn to your repertoire practice, you'll already be more familiar with the shapes, you'll already be more familiar with strumming patterns, and it'll make your exercise a lot more fun. Because I can tell you that the more you can play on this instrument, the more fun it is. Now, my personal background, I've been playing as an entertainer in the blues world on a ukulele for many years, and I spend, prior to the pandemic, I spent 7 months a year traveling around playing different festivals, and so I have a lot of fun turning this into a blues instrument, so that I can do things like, hey, baby, don't you want to go? Oh, hey, don't you want to go back to that same old place? Lord, that's my sweet home, Chicago. And the more you can do those kind of things and play the music that you are attracted to, the more you're going to enjoy the ukulele, and that's what I want for you. So I guess that's kind of the end of my spoken dissertation. I'd like to open it up to you now, and are there any questions you have? And let's talk about things that are specific to you. And this feels so weird in Zoom to just be looking at a screen of myself and Matt and wanting to see other faces. So please feel free to speak up, and let's talk. Sure. I'll play you one of the first blues songs I learned on the ukulele. It's from 1928. Well, nobody knows Atlanta like I do. Ain't nobody knows Atlanta like I do. All the reason I know it, Lord, I traveled it through and through. Well, is that Pamu 33? I hope I said that right. Any tips for storing, caring for a ukulele? Well, yes, I have lots I can suggest for that. First off, get yourself a good case. I mean, if it comes with a gig bag, that's fine. Just make sure that the instrument is protected when you put it away so that you don't accidentally sit on it or something falls against it. You won't like it being broken and that. But I'm going to suggest that even though you have a nice case, you never put your ukulele away. A ukulele that you put away is one that you don't play, so you should always keep it out somewhere where you can use it. So to that end, get yourself a stand of some kind. There's many great little ukulele stands out there. I've got one right here beside me, which is what I'm reaching for. This is a little portable fold-up one that you can sit on a table anywhere. It goes in your case if you want to carry it with you. There are many, and I know Long & McQuaid carries a good selection of them. Get a stand for it. Get a wall hook for it. Put it somewhere where you'll use it, because that's how you'll play for it. You want to dust it with just a soft cloth. Don't use any kind of furniture polish or anything like that on it. If it does get something spilled on it, wipe it off quickly. If there's a what am I trying to say? If you get some guns, you know, we all leave grease and things on our fretboards from our fingertips. If you had it long enough for that to be a case, take it to the techs at Long & McQuaid or your local luthier and say, hey, can you clean this up for me? Because there are cleaners, there are ways to make it like new again. If you're handy, you can do it yourself. And I do recommend you learn to take your strings off and change them, but that's a topic for another day. I've got another question here from Gord Thorderson. Andres, I see yours too. I'll get to you in a minute. Glenn, pardon me. I said Gord Thorderson. Glenn Thorderson. How many different styles are there to tune, and what's the most recommended style? I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you asking, are there different tunings that you can tune the ukulele? Yes. There are many different tunings, but the primary ones that everyone uses are C6 and D6. And C6 is the G, C, E, A that we talked about. D6 is A, D, F sharp, B. If you're a baritone ukulele player, you'll tune your ukulele D, G, B, E, which is the same as the top four strings of a guitar. And there are many ukulele players like myself who have also started experimenting with open chord tunings on a ukulele. Now, that's a bigger conversation, but our C6 chord, for example, our C chord, I should say, is in fact a form of an open chord. We have G, C, and E here, which is our C chord, and then I'm adding an extra C on top to get a full sounding chord. But without that, I have a C chord, and that song that I was playing at the start of these questions plays on that by leaving the top two strings open the whole time, and I'm playing melodies up here on the neck. Here, I'll do it on my concert neck so you can hear the difference and you can see my hand a little better. So I'm building melodies on top of that C chord by using the open voicing. So I'd say at the beginning, Glenn, stick to C because you're the C6 tuning, GCEA, because all the books you're going to find, all of the materials, the resources are going to be there in that tuning, and that'll be the easiest way to go. Andreas, C. Makes me want to get some lessons. Such a nice sounding ukulele. What type of ukulele are you using now? Well, this is a custom made ukulele that was built for me by a gentleman named Fred Casey from Winnipeg Beach, Manitoba. It is a tenor neck on the bottom with a low G and a concert neck on the top with a high G. My joke to people is that I'm the only person I know who takes a small portable instrument like the ukulele and makes it bigger and less portable. But I like the ability to go back and forth, and so you don't certainly have to do that. You don't have to get anything as fancy as what I have. This is what you get when you make a living teaching ukulele. And I've taught in workshops where I've tuned the top neck to play to Glenn's question in D6 and the bottom neck in C6, and taught people who play in both tunings the same song. And it's very different. Peggy Jarvis, what do you want to do? What do you do with a student who wants to learn ukulele but doesn't sing? Is there an app they can play their chords along with the melody? Yes. Well, there is an awful lot of ukulele that is style that is in fact using chord melody. One of the favorite ones that I like to play is let's let's see, I'm trying to think of a few different songs. I'm trying to get the one I know. So that's an example of chord melody, of course, with the Christmas song there. There's a lot of ways to do that. You don't need to necessarily sing. As far as, is there an app you can play chords along with the melody? Yes, there are many different kind of apps you can get. But I don't know of many that come with the melodies already done for you. I think what you're going to want to do as you develop is get a looping app and then play the chords and then turn around and play the melody at the beginning if you can't do it all together. Or find someone to play with. I know that in these pandemic times everyone's a little nervous about getting together, but as we're getting ourselves vaccinated and getting more comfortable, gather together in small groups, and if you're comfortable with playing the melody, then someone else can play the chords. Paul Hooper, choosing soprano, tenor, or. That's a very good question. I guess your question is, which one do you choose? I would say the answer to that is strictly about the size of your hands and how the instrument feels against your body. I'm a fairly large guy. I used to play a soprano ukulele, a Martin, and I still own it, but I found that I always felt like it was a little too small for me, so I ended up going to tenor, which is this bottom neck, and concert is a little bit longer. The trick is to just find the ukulele that fits you best. Go to Long & McQuaid, pick up a bunch of them, play them. If you can't play them yourself right at the beginning, take someone who can play so you can listen to them, but feel the way they feel in your hand. Think about moving your fingers around, and if you're like me and you've got slightly sausage fingers, you might want a bigger neck because it's a little bit more reach. The larger the instrument, the deeper the bass too, so depending on what your preference of sound. P. Heidick, I don't know what P stands for, but nice to hear your question. Do you ever use a capo on a uke? Yes, but you don't need to. I feel like I'm just throwing up walls, and I don't want to. Here's the deal. There are capos. I even own one that work for a ukulele neck. You can use it. So if you're just learning the key of C, for example, those first three chords, C, F, and G7, you can throw a capo on and suddenly be playing an A and so on. Absolutely no problem. The reason I wouldn't say that is that the instrument doesn't require very much for you to play up the neck. So for example, if I wanted to play that C chord in D, I can use this index finger as a capo playing a bar chord and using my pinky there, and now I'm playing that chord in D. If I want to play the G, then the F moved up, I just there. Now this is a little harder for a beginner, I admit, and a capo is simpler. There's a philosophy I have, and I'm going to share it with you now. All roads lead to Rome. And what that means to me is, if your goal is to play a certain song in a certain key, and you get there by using a capo, you don't fail the task. So get a capo if that's what you like, and use it with blessing. But I think you should also learn to play without one. Gord Meads. With a tenor concert baritone ukuleles, do the bigger ukuleles like the baritone have more space between the strings to accommodate larger hands and fingers? Yes, they do. The difference is, especially if you're going to baritone, Gord, the tuning is completely different than what we're talking about here today. It's more akin to a guitar. In fact, it's the top four strings of a guitar. So if you're going to look at a baritone, you have to be aware that you're going to have the same problem that a left-handed person might face, in that you're not going to find a lot of resources written specifically for your tuning. Doesn't mean it's not a good one. There is an advantage to playing a baritone. I have baritone right over my my left shoulder here. That's my right shoulder. That's a baritone uke made by the same fellow. And the nice thing about a baritone uke is, if you take to P. Heidick's comment about the capo, if you put a capo on the 5th fret of a baritone ukulele, you're playing a tenor ukulele or a soprano. So there's an advantage for you in that regard. Andreas, what song was it that you just played? That's God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. And I love it because it all just lives right under your fingers. John Owen Cameron Reed. Wow, that's a, as my grandfather said, that's a mouthful. Can you do a quick review of the position of the left-hand thumb? The left-hand thumb. Yes, I can. You want to have it in the center of the neck, in the center of your hand where you're making the chord. This is very hard for me to demonstrate because I can't really turn this ukulele around too easily. Let me switch to my soprano so you can see a true soprano ukulele in my big hands. Pardon me one sec. There we go. I was going to say I can't hear you, but I can't hear you anyway. These are for my my tech who needs to tell me when I'm losing signal. So this is my Martin soprano. This is my first ukulele. So I want to put my thumb in the middle of the back of the neck and in the middle of the grouping of my fingers. And so it looks like this. And that gives me the best pressure point and the best placement of my thumb for it. Again, with a small instrument like this, you can see that there's an easy tendency to drop your thumb over there. You've got to watch that. Now, Wayne Turcott, would you change the high G with a low G string? Would you? I would, but I like a low G. Not everyone does. In fact, the traditional sound of a ukulele is with that high G. And if you're trying to play traditional ukulele music, you know, you probably don't want to do that. But if you're trying to play certain jazz music or arrangements, or you want to do some melodic solo playing, a low G can be advantageous. In every situation, you'll want to speak with a luthier or a repair tech. A soprano, for example, I tend to don't think they sound too good with a low G. I think you want to be going to the bigger instruments for the low G. But in any case, you're going to need your nut slot routed appropriately for the size of the string, and you're going to want to make sure that the intonation is kept accurate along the neck. Sue Holland, how should I hold my wrist? Loose, straight, my wrist tires quickly. And how do you support the uke against your body? Mine doesn't have a neck strap. That is a absolutely brilliant question, Sue. It's one of the key problems that people face in the beginning. My big uke there, I have a strap because it's much heavier. They say, and I say this is the official they, say you're supposed to wedge the ukulele against your chest with your strumming arm, the forearm placed right there, and your headstock should not fall down, so you have enough pressure that it should stay there, and you're just strumming, and then you are bracing the uke with your fretting hand. Now you want to hold your wrist sort of loose but straight on your fretting hand. You don't want it to be bent way out here like this or way like this. You kind of want a nice relaxed straight feel. Now if you are feeling tired in your hand, there are two possibilities. Well, maybe more than two. I'm going to stick to two. The first one is that you are flexing your wrist in an uncomfortable way, so make sure that you get it in a nice relaxed straight pattern. The second is you are probably squeezing the heck out of your ukulele to get a chord, and you don't want to do that. In fact, here's a test that I often recommend. Take your ukulele out in front of you like this, holding it about the middle of the strings, and then loosen off your grip just enough that it starts to slide. You only should need just enough tension that ukulele does not slide. And that's all you should be holding it. If you're squeezing it any harder than that, you are really overdoing it, and you're going to tire your hand way out. Heather Lysing, I have a husband, teacher, who would like me to play my baritone with guitar chords. Your thought? He is a teacher. Absolutely. If you want to play your baritone and using guitar chords, you totally can. A baritone uke is tuned D-G-B-E. An acoustic guitar is tuned E-A-D-G-B-E. So when you're looking at a guitar chord, all you would have to do, Heather, is ignore the two leftmost strings on that chord diagram, and everything will work for you. That'll be your quick way in. As a matter of fact, for all of our soprano players, when I first started playing ukulele 30 years ago, there was no YouTube resources, and the books were not readily available anywhere. When I went to Long and McQuaid in those days, I found one ukulele in my local store. So if you didn't like it, that was the only thing you got a choice of. What I used to do was I used to use guitar diagrams, and I just realized that they were 1/5 up, so the shape that I knew or saw on a guitar diagram was not in the same key, but it would in fact work. That's B-S-T, B Street. B Street or B Saint. Either one is good for me. Can you show finger picking styles? I can. The simplest is a straight arpeggio. And all I'm doing there is using my fingers individually to pluck one string at a time. And that is a nice skill to have. It is just, you practice that as much as you practice a strumming pattern, just one finger at a time. Now, the next type of finger picking is what's known as Travis picking, and this is where you introduce moves like pinches to create a melody. So, for example, little freight train there. Now, you could see that other than my hand is doing different moves than the arpeggio, my right hand is still basically one string per, one finger per string. And I'm moving these fingers along to create the melody. So the rule I use is my thumb always runs the G string, my index finger always runs the C string, my middle finger runs the E string, and my ring finger runs the A string. So when I'm playing a pattern, these strings, my fingers live on those strings. Now, there are exceptions to that, but most of the time that's exactly how it works. Now, Joan W., what uke is best for finger picking style, low G or high G? There's no easy answer to that, Joan, because the issue comes down to the arrangement of the music, not the style. There are some songs that are arranged and written to use the high G, and there are songs that are written and arranged to use the low G. What I would suggest is you find the music you want to learn and then go back and forth. I, for example, when I started playing, was using high G, and I would do a lot of blues stuff that sounded like this with... And I used to make a joke that sounded like the Sesame Street theme, you know? I said now, sunny day. Anyway, that's ridiculous. But the point is that a high G on that kind of a blues strum doesn't work as well as a low G. So you need to find the music you want to play and then get an instrument to suit it. It is not uncommon for ukulele players to have more than one ukulele for that purpose alone. In fact, one of my favorite stories is George Formby, the great George Formby, used to have several different ukuleles with him on tour, and he would have them all tuned differently, so each one for a different key that he was going to play in. And that way he always played the same way, but he had different songs because he had a different tuning to start with. Diane W., could you discuss a tobacco box ukulele, please? Sure, I don't know what to say. Cigar box ukuleles are becoming a thing. You'll notice right over my left shoulder, I've got a cigar box guitar right there. I'm in fact, I make cigar box guitars myself and ukuleles. They're more for style than for grace. They don't tend to sound as good. That's not to say that it's terrible. It depends on what you're trying to do, but they're usually not a box that's built for acoustic resonance. So if you like one and you enjoy it, terrific, that's great. And if you're a hobbyist and you want to build one, go for it. I got one down on my bench right now that is a resonator guitar, resonator ukulele. So this is over there, that's my resonator guitar right there. That's a full-size 6-string guitar. I'm making a cigar box ukulele that has that resonator in it. Not that big one, but exactly. And it'll be fun. Sparkle Ukulele Journey 2021. I love your name. How often or how do you know when you should change strings? Oh, well, that is another great question. I don't know that I have a good answer for you, Sparkle Ukulele. When I got this ukulele, I inherited this from my grandfather. I had it it came with the original Martin ukulele strings that were on it. This is a 1955 Martin, by the way. My grandfather never actually played it. He inherited it, and then he gave it to me a few years later. I don't know when those strings got put on it, but it was 5 or 6 years before I changed the strings on it. So were they dead by the time I did it? Probably. I didn't notice anything. So what I would suggest is this. If your ukulele works and the strings are staying in tune and you don't dislike how it sounds, there's no reason to rush out and change strings. If, on the other hand, you're like me and you've got a low G with a wound string, you'll notice that after a while there will be breaks that appear in that string. At that point, I tend to just change them all just because I know that they're wearing out, and that's my clue that they're wearing out. The purists among you, and this is not meant to denigrate anybody who feels otherwise or feels that they're great, will notice that it might sound duller. If it sounds duller, change the strings. If you don't notice that, then there's no need to. I've got a friend who plays a National Steel guitar. He's a blues guy, and he keeps his strings for years. They are the deadest, dullest, awful sounding things I can think of, yet when he plays it sounds fantastic. So this is a personal choice. The one thing I'm going to say about strings is this, and this is not meant to be negative to our host today with Long and McQuaid, but there is absolutely a huge amount of discussion in ukulele world for which strings are the best. Everyone has their favorites, whether it's Worth, whether it's Aquila, whether it's D'Addario, whoever. Everybody's going to have a reason why their choice of strings are the best ones. I'm not going to say don't buy them all. I'm going to say buy it, try a few, and if you find one you like, stick with it. I personally prefer Aquila. I stick with them. I have on occasion used D'Addario because I've had no choice, and guess what? They sound great. I don't buy the Martin strings anymore, but that's just because I use the other ones. Every string will have a different feel. So Aquila strings, for example, tend to feel a little more like a gut string. They tend to grab your fingers a little more. Not everyone appreciates that. Worth strings are a fluorocarbon. They're like a plastic. They sound great. People like them. They're usually softer on the strumming. So if you're a strummer and that's what you want out of it, you might like them better. So how often do you change? When do you need? Just when you feel it's time. Be aware, though, that anytime you change your ukulele strings, they are going to be out of tune for a good long while. That's Mira Thadney. Thadney? I hope I said that right. Any thoughts on the 5-string ukulele which has a low and a high G string tongue together? Absolutely. I think they're fantastic that way. I played a few over the years. There's also 8-string ukuleles you can get, and taro patch ukes which have multiple strings. These are all great ways to make an instrument sound more interesting and more exciting. So feel free to explore it and enjoy it. I don't think that they suit everything, but if you're a strummer, for example, I think the multiple strings sound really good. So anyway, I hope that answered all your questions. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I want to thank Matt Durante for facilitating this for Long and McQuaid, and thank Long and McQuaid for inviting me to come and talk to you today. I'd like to encourage you to seek me out on YouTube. I have a number of instructional videos, and my name is Manitoba Hal, as you saw. My website is manitobahal.com. And I'd love to see you. I travel and tour and do workshops when I can, and I'd love to come and visit you. I will be in the Ottawa area this coming week, so if you're in the Ottawa area, you can come and see me at Vibrations. Anyway, thank you very much, and have yourselves a great afternoon.